All right. This is great. I'm glad that we dragged you in here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we crossed paths first because of Pete and Dave, I guess, right?
That's right. Proactive athlete.
Yeah. And then they thought, no, what happened? You went and spoke for those guys. Mm-hmm. And I think they were raving about you. And I wanted to come out, and then I couldn't make it that day. My daughter had some horseback riding. So I tried to make it from the stables there, and it just didn't work out. And anyways, yeah. So I appreciate you coming out.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
So here's why, because what you are up to is like this story that most people, that you don't come across every day. So, and I don't even know where to start with that. So like, let's go. What about your background a little bit? Let's go to your background and kind of before what you're doing now, like kind of like, where did you kind of come from? I know you're in the medical field. Like what was your kind of experience leading up to when you made this transition into Benchmark?
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up as an athlete and was always very interested in health and really preventative health, right? Really cared about my sleep, my performance, my nutrition. Ended up playing tennis down in the States and, just was so kind of surprised at how much attention like my body got down there, right? Like I had sports trainers and I had physical trainers and nutritionists, and I thought, oh my gosh, like it'd be amazing if everybody got
Was this, you were in like college down there?
Yeah. I played tennis at Rutgers University.
Okay.
So really like always interested in prevention. And then I ended up going to medical school, and
were you thinking about going to medical school before you went down there?
What was interesting is, no, I didn't know. Okay. So for most of my life, I thought, okay, I would love to be a doctor. Like I had an ear infection that a doctor cleared for me when I was like 8. And
you were amazed by it.
I was like, okay, like whoever does that, I want to do that too. And so, yeah, always had an interest in the human body and in medicine. But I also had an interest in business. So when I was at Rutgers, I actually graduated from the Rutgers Business School in accounting, which most people find funny because I'm not very good at accounting. And accounting led you to medical school. Yeah, those are two different paths. Yeah. So I minored in chemistry though. So to keep my sciences, because I always was just like, I really love learning about the human body. But if I don't get into medical school, what am I going to do? So I wanted to have like sort of two options. I actually worked as a consultant for a company called Carpedia, and Ritz-Carlton was my client. And so I traveled around the US to Ritz-Carlton hotels, learned a ton about service from them, but realized quickly that my passion wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And so I applied to medical school. I went to McMaster, which was an amazing experience. I did family medicine training at University of Toronto, and then I pursued an additional year to become an emergency room physician at U of T as well.
Oh, wow. So then, but you had a family practice for a while, right?
No, I never had a family practice. Okay. I actually moved right from family medicine residency into a fellowship. Well, I had 2 kids in my family medicine residency, so I didn't move like right into that. Some mat leaves in there. And then I ended up practicing in Brantford my first 3 years, where I learned more about emergency medicine than I think I ever did. It was like an unbelievable experience. And then I spent 7 or 8 years at Credit Valley Emergency Department.
Oh, wow. I'd imagine compared to like Brantford's great, but Credit Valley, the volume's got to be busier there, right?
Yeah. So Brantford, a lot higher acuity. So people coming in much sicker. They don't have access to primary care. They have communities where, there's just a lot of trauma. And we didn't have a lot of support. So like you really learn a lot about medicine. You learn a lot about emergency medicine because it's you. And then at Credit Valley, you're right, volume's a lot higher. Acuity was still high. But really learned how to manage like more volume at Credit Valley than Brantford.
Are people, and I don't know if you want to even answer this question, so don't if you don't want to.
Sure.
But I'm just wondering, like, in my opinion, sometimes the few times I've had to go to Emerge, I look around and I'm like, sometimes it feels like some people are there that shouldn't be there. Like, do people take it? Do you feel like sometimes the volume's so high because there's not this other outlet and people just like, that's the default to go to on a weekend because they don't know where else to go? Because sometimes I just feel like it's being abused.
Right. Yeah. I think that absolutely does happen. As a physician, you need to be really careful not to fall into that trap. Every single person I saw, I made sure that they felt like their visit was reasonable, because sometimes there's things underneath.
Yeah. So you don't know.
You never know. Like sometimes people are coming in for like a stubbed toe, but really like, they have a very difficult home life. They've got so much anxiety they're not managing. Like, there's a lot of, sometimes, these visits that may look like, oh, you really shouldn't be using emergency medicine resources.
Yeah.
There's things that are, so I tried never to fall into that assumption.
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. But I think the point is that, we don't have a lot of resources right now. And so people do use the emergency department, and I don't blame them, right? Like, I don't blame them. They don't have access to care. And sometimes emergency room is the only way that they can see a physician. And, we pay a lot of taxes here. We should have access, and sometimes we don't. So when people need to access the emergency department for that, I get it.
Yeah. I can't believe in that role. It's like when I speak to some people I know that are either firefighters or paramedics, the types of things you must see in that role are, it's all like I guess you have to be able to compartmentalize it, because otherwise, like, it would just weigh on you.
Yeah, I think that's also interesting. I was involved in starting or, helping with a peer support group at Credit Valley, because first responders see a lot. And if we do kind of bottle it, then that's when we become sick, or we get burnt out, or we become anxious or depressed. And you're absolutely right. Like, we are exposed to a lot of trauma, and, we need to be able to work that through. So the peer support group was, an avenue for people to talk about the stuff we see. Because, sometimes we see a lot of like really devastating things and manage them. And like, the pressure and, there's a lot about emergency medicine that, that people don't realize.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it for sure. I'm just thinking I have a soft spot for kids, and I'm thinking anything that involves like, kids coming in with certain things, maybe not if they like broke their arm or whatever, that's just being kids, but there's other instances. And I guess because of something you said, I just thought, I'm like, oh, wow. So you probably had to deal with instances, and I'm not asking you about this, but at times when you have to evaluate whether there's something going on, if a child comes in with an injury, and then you have to think about, hey, is this like a home life issue? That would be tough for me. That would be tough.
And we're trained to kind of think about certain injuries and certain patterns to recognize if there's a potential for abuse at home. But yeah, absolutely. Like, there's times where, you really have to sort of separate your emotion from your duty.
Yeah. One time, my youngest daughter, I remember what happened. My wife was going to do her hair or something. So she kind of grabbed her arm. She's like, oh yeah, come here. And she pulled her arm, and I think her elbow dislocated slightly. And we had to go to Emerge because we didn't know what was going on. Right. And that, they popped it back in. I think they tilted it, and you just kind of push it back, something like that. And, I felt like saying, like, hey, just so you know, like, this has never happened before, because I felt terrible. I'm like, what are they going to think? And then what happened was we had to go back like 2 weeks later or something. Same thing happened. All she was doing was getting on the couch. She like had pushed herself down on the couch, and the same thing, it popped out again. And we had to go back. I was like, oh my God, they're going to think that this is us.
Okay, never worry about going to the emergency department for that. It's our favorite presentation. Like, we go over and we're just like, click, click, back in place. We look like magicians. Everybody's happy. Yeah. Like, the kid leaves, it's fixed. It's like one of our best. Like, I love when they're called a nursemaid's elbow. And one of my top 5 favorites. So don't worry about going for that.
Okay, perfect. Now I know. Well, the kids are older now. That shouldn't be happening anymore to those joints. But okay, so so then you were in Emerge, and then you decided, because now you're doing something that's like, I guess I would say, like, how's it received what you're doing? Because if you're looking at preventative health now, is a lot of the stuff you were looking at considered, maybe not now, but let's say 5 years ago, or when you were going down this path, was it kind of considered a little bit like airy-fairy stuff? Like it wasn't almost real medicine in a way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that would depend on who I'm talking to.
Okay.
Right. I think now it's becoming more and more clear that, there's this big gap in our system, right? And prevention is something that, we're not good at. I have to say that our system is incredible at treating illness. Like, I have the most amazing colleagues, and working in the front lines, I have to say, like, the nurses, the doctors, like all of us, we try really hard, and we're really good at managing disease. But the system is just, it's not designed to prevent it. So the airy-fairy, comments come from people who are sort of ignorant to this gap.
Okay, so then from that experience then in the emergency room, then I guess you decided that you want to go down this different path, right? Which is like, I guess a little, I think to me, what makes your story unique is like, wow, well, I had this, I was always interested in medicine. I went down this path of emerge and helping people. But I really now wanted to focus on this preventative side of things, which is a little bit, it seems very different than the emerge side. So I don't know, like where did the transition happen for you into kind of what you're up to now?
Yeah, great question. Like it's different, yes and no, right? Like everything that I see in the emergency department, when I started to really realize, especially in COVID, what lifestyle choices, the effects that your lifestyle choices have on your health, prevention was everything I saw. Like, obviously things like heart attack, stroke, diabetes are things that often are preventable. But then I started to see it in everything: PCOS, acne, back pain, knee pain, like so many things that I saw in the emergency department. Like, wow, this is, from a preventative lens, if I could talk to you 3-4 years before this, maybe we could have prevented it. Most of the chronic diseases that we're facing today are because of the way we live our life.
And inflammation based?
Yeah, there's a lot of inflammation based. It's like, what are you doing day to day? How are you sleeping? How are you eating? How are you exercising? So in the emergency department, being on the front lines, there's nothing that taught me more about prevention than that experience, and the impact of lifestyle choices on disease. And so I just started to feel like I had to do something different.
Okay.
Also just living this lifestyle myself, like, being really interested in prevention since I was a little girl.
How did being in the emerge teach you about the prevention? Because in the emerge, it's just always reactive to whatever the acute injury or illness is at that time. No? So I can't connect the dots.
Yeah. So, when I see somebody who, for example, let's say had a heart attack, and, maybe that they, have a very poor lifestyle, they're overweight, they eat poorly, they smoke. And I think to myself, okay, if I could give you information 5 years prior to this, right? If we could do a deep dive into your lifestyle to give you metrics that matter, that are modifiable, and I can teach you about how to prevent this life-altering diagnosis, like that makes sense to me. And it's such a clear gap. And so what ended up happening really, like to kind of tie it all together, is I was just like so interested in prevention. I started learning, listening to all the podcasts, reading books on my day off. And then I started to give talks. So one of the talks that I gave was just about the power of measurement and how, if we're in a healthcare system that does not support prevention, how can we take ownership of our own health? And this talk really struck a chord with the audience. And they were like, this makes total sense. And so my husband's an entrepreneur. And he was like, you know what? This makes sense. Let's try some stuff. So I had him do a VO2 max, a DEXA scan, had him wear the Whoop, which is a wearable, got him to get blood work. I had him wear a continuous glucose monitor, like all of the things. And
he was your guinea pig.
So he was patient zero. Yeah. And he's like very analytical. And so he was just like, oh man, I'm going to bed earlier. He's like, I'm drinking way less. I am working out more.
So he was doing that on purpose because of this, or he just decided to change those habits as well?
With the raw data, he was like, just making informed decisions. Like,
oh, because he could see the impact that it had.
You got it.
Gotcha.
You got it. And then he was really very inspiring and very like motivational. He was like, all right, Kaitlin, go. Like, go buy 10 Whoops, go ask your friends and family, like go put them through a program. Let's just start.
When was this? When did you start doing this?
This was 2023.
Oh, so really recent, even more recent.
2022, maybe the end of, but like 2023 was when we sort of like started, like piloting people. Like I called it a pilot.
Yeah.
And so I was piloting like my parents, like my close friends, like anybody who would trust me. And then I was like kind of putting them through these like these tests and then building reports. And then what ended up happening, which I don't think I had anticipated, was I started to grow a wait list. People were like, well, I want to do that. Well, I want to be in the pilot.
Oh, that's cool.
And then when I got to a certain wait list, I was like, okay, I don't have this skill to pull this off on a bigger scale. And then, so that's when I knocked on one of my best friend's doors, who I've known my whole life. Her name is Nancy Van Brunt, and she's the co-founder of Benchmark.
Yeah. And so what's her background?
Yeah, we have a really, I think a really interesting story. So she and I grew up on the same street. I met her when she was 4, I was 5. And we grew up together, really pushing each other the whole time. So very competitive, always trying to beat each other in every sort of class.
Is it healthy or no?
No, super healthy. Yeah. Super healthy. I was always so pissed when she beat me and stuff, which was mostly. But we also grew up playing different sports. I played tennis and she was a runner. So we both went down to the States. She ran at Dartmouth. I played tennis at Rutgers, and then Nance stayed there. So she worked as a consultant in New York City and worked for Sesame Street, a really interesting background. She went to business school at Berkeley, where she met her husband. And so she's now in San Francisco with 3 girls. So when I asked her, I was like, hey, I'm in the very, very early stages of startup, which did not at all scare Nance. Yeah. She was like, I'm in. And so we were like, let's go for this.
Oh, that's so cool. So she's not even local here?
No, she's not.
Because I've just seen her on the emails or communicated with her that way. I didn't even realize.
No, wow. She's, and she actually ran a pilot in San Francisco as well. So she, had 10 participants, I think actually 12, just to go through the program to see it for herself. And after she did that, she was like, I'm all in. This makes total sense. And so she and I are co-founders.
So, and then the belief with yours is just this is if you're monitoring your health, the idea, and correct me because I'm going to butcher this, but the idea is to get the metrics of where you're at on a health basis so that you can choose to do whatever you want to do to try to make those better. If so, you choose better sleep, better diet, whatever, to then hopefully prevent to age better and prevent some potentially serious illnesses that can be prevented. Yeah. As best possible. I mean, nothing's perfect, right? But yeah.
Yeah, it's a system, right? It's a system that provides our members with metrics that matter, that are modifiable, so that they can understand their health. Right now, I would argue that most of us are operating in the dark with our health metrics. We know more about our computer and our car and our phones than we do about our own health. And I think in 20 years, our grandkids are going to be like, I cannot believe you did not know that. I think that the trend is going to be to know more. Our bodies are really complex systems. And the fact that we don't have more information, I think is really alarming. We need to know more.
Yeah. The thing that freaked me out sometimes, one of my friend's father said to me once, it was after one of his relatives got fairly sick, because something had been bothering the person that got sick for a while, never went to get it checked out. He's like, it's crazy. He goes, if your car's making a noise, you take it to the mechanics. But if something hurts or it feels off in your body, you're like, no, I don't need to go. And you just push it off more and more. He goes, it doesn't make any sense.
Our bodies have no alarms, right? We have nothing to say, okay, this is going a little off kilter. And so we wait until it's too late, right? Yeah. We present when we're sick, and we can do better. We can do so much better. We can take a lot more control over our own health by getting metrics that predict longevity, that predict health span.
Yeah, the first time I went down this path was before we met you. Tom went to see a doctor we've had on the podcast too. You know him too, Dr. Callum Cowan.
Yeah, great.
So Dr. Cowan, Tom went to deal with some stuff and it's kind of helped him, and he had good experiences. He's like, Nick, you should, I don't know, this guy's going to get busy, because he was starting to work with more sports teams and things like that at the time. He's like, you might want to check him out. I'm like, I don't really have anything, but I'm like, okay, sure, I'll go. So I went, and it was great. Well, there was a first time that I got full blood panel done, full, not the family practitioner blood panel, it was way more in depth. I did the food sensitivity thing, cortisol testing. So all these different things. And it was great. And there was something that came to mind, because I used to eat certain foods and I would just get a little bit bloated. I was like, yeah, it felt off. I would just get this bloated feeling. I'm like, oh, I guess, it's just not good quality or something. And through that, we ended up making changes to, I went on a pretty strict diet for about a month, like pretty strict to the point where my energy started crashing. It was like an he called it the anti-candida diet or something, but it was like literally like no sugar. I couldn't eat carrots even and stuff. Like it was pretty strict. And I was on a couple supplements, and it just changed everything. Because of course, when you clean yourself out to that level, you start feeling a little bit better once you kind of reintroduce stuff. But I meant, because I understood things and I had the metrics and I had the data, and like, hey, here, go down this path for your body, go down this path, because that doesn't mean it's the right path for everyone. And when I stuck to that, is like the problems that I didn't even think I had, really, I'm like, oh, it's just a minor thing. They went away.
Exactly. Like healthy people have room to modify things. And I think at Benchmark, we also think about things that are modifiable, right? Like everything we test except for one marker, you have control over.
Hey everyone, I wanted to quickly share my personal journey with the Rockstar Inner Circle. I joined Rockstar when I was 23 years old because I wanted to learn how to invest in real estate, and I was looking for the right people to guide me. What I didn't expect was how much more the Inner Circle would give me. It's not just about investing, it's about being a part of a community that is genuinely invested in each other's success. I've learned so much here, from real estate strategies to understanding the economy, personal finance, and how the whole money system works. I've gained the knowledge to build my own business, create my own assets, and leverage the biggest trends in the world. But more than that, it's the growth mindset and personal development that have transformed how I approach life and investing. Having a community of like-minded people to share wisdom, experiences, and lessons with has been invaluable. From finding tenants and growing a real estate portfolio to designing the life you want, it's been a game changer. Being part of the Inner Circle has completely changed my perspective on money and life. The insights I've gained have helped me make smarter decisions, and I'm now way more confident in my financial future. If you're ready to level up your investing, mindset, and your life, I can't recommend the Rockstar Inner Circle enough. It's not just a membership, it's an opportunity to design the life you want. Thanks for letting me share this with you, and I hope to see you in the Inner Circle soon. If you're curious to learn more, feel free to check out rockstarinnercircle.com/get started for free resources and see if it's the right fit for you. Now back to the show.
So give me a few examples. Like, what do you mean by modifiable?
Yeah, like things that you have control to change, right?
So like your sugar, your glucose levels?
You got it. Like your lean mass on DEXA, like your VO2 max, like, your sugar controls, of course. But a lot of the things that we care about, things that are modifiable. And then one other point that you just brought up that I think is really important is you said you started to understand what they meant. Right? We provide our members with knowledge, because when people understand their own body and how to, move metrics one way or the other, then they're a lot more likely to do it. Like knowledge is power.
Yeah, 100%.
I know you guys really think that here.
No, 100%. And the one thing I try to tell people, and so we know similar people, we were talking about a friend of mine earlier, and I would say, you don't know if you don't know what good feels like you can't get a true assessment of how you feel until you know what feeling good is like. Mm-hmm. And then once you know that, then your body, you can understand things. And I just went through this with my kids. Both kids are doing this, I guess. And look, I want to be clear with everyone. I am not forcing this on the kids. This was their choice. I just wanted them to always understand what they were putting in their bodies, what it was doing to them with certain things. Mm-hmm. So my oldest daughter had decided at one point, this was about 6 months ago now. So she was eating out a lot and stuff after she started going to high school, so they had more freedom. So she was going out for lunch with her friends and things like that. And she was eating out a lot more and stuff. And then she just came to this conclusion that she just wanted to start doing meal prep for herself. So she wanted to do it. So I'm like, look, I'll help you, no problem. So I was buying like sirloin steaks for her. I was cooking steaks on Sundays. She was taking like steak and rice and vegetables for lunch. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to say anything. And then after a couple of weeks, I'm like, do you want to change it up a little bit or anything? And then she decided to, she's like, yeah, she changed it up. And then she's like, Dad, like, I'm just feeling better. Like, I just feel better. Like, she ended up losing some weight as well. She probably had some weight to lose. She wasn't like really overweight or anything, but she lost some weight. She's like, I don't feel like it's bloated anymore. Stuff like, I just feel better. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, yeah, perfect. And now she's a teenager. So I took her to Wingstop the other day. She had wings, fries, and I was like, please don't get the whatever Pepsi she want, Diet Coke. I'm like, please just don't get that. Just not that part. Just get a water. I'll give you the other stuff. Just drink the water, please. But anyway, she got an iced tea or something and she ate it. And that shortly after, she felt like crap. Her stomach was hurting her and things like that. And I'm just like, yeah, once your body feels good, you can still do that stuff, but now at least you can see the difference it makes.
Yeah. And I would argue that your daughter sounds like she's got a lot of insight, probably from watching her dad. And, a lot of people are relying on these subjective feelings, right? Like my energy is like not great today, or, I feel like my pants are feeling a little bit tighter. And like we really are relying way too heavily on subjective markers, and we need to get data on our bodies that are meaningful, and then we need to track them, and then we need to improve them and retest.
Yeah. The weight thing's one too that freaks me out with people.
Yeah.
Because especially like sometimes women, it's like they I shouldn't say, I feel like women are more obsessed with their weight than guys. I could be wrong. I don't know. But so, I mean, someone's going to write that I'm a sexist from that comment and thing. But anyways, that's fine. But I try to tell women, I'm like, look, if you start working out, don't worry about the weight. You need the body composition. And I know DEXA is like, you go through the DEXA scan, which is like the best one. But even if you go through one that, if you use some similar marker, because if you're losing fat and gaining muscle and your weight doesn't change, who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah.
And that goes along with BMI too, right? BMI is not a metric that I believe in at all. Body composition really matters for a couple reasons, right? We want to know someone's lean mass. Muscle is like critical to your overall health. I can't believe what I did not learn about muscle in med school that I now know. The other thing is that knowing your visceral adipose tissue. So what is that in the first place? So that is the fat that surrounds the organs. People can appear to be thin and healthy, but may have a lot of visceral adipose tissue. Why do we care about that? Because it's an inflammatory fat that can cause a whole host of issues: insulin resistance, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. And you can look in the mirror and have zero idea of how much visceral
Really?
adipose
I thought you would have, like, as a guy at least, like I thought when I see like the kind of guts on them, that's more that fat gathering there. You can actually look slim and have that as well?
Absolutely.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that.
the subcutaneous fat is the fat that lives all over the body. Okay. And everybody has a certain amount of fat that they can store that's healthy for them. And that's based on genetics and ethnicity. We have no idea. And as soon as somebody fills that space, right? So Peter Attia talks about this as a sink. As soon as that sink is filled, you start to spill over into the viscera. And so maybe if you have this tiny sink, you may appear to be, sort of like thin and healthy, but you may actually have quite a bit of visceral adipose tissue. And without getting body composition, we don't know that. So that's a perfect example of flying blind. And relying on metrics that are subjective or not, predictive.
So then explain muscle. You mentioned you didn't know, like the importance of muscle. You didn't understand it all. You weren't taught it. So
Yes.
What do you understand about it now?
So I think two things that, so talking about skeletal muscle now, and so like outside of like
skeletal muscle is just like muscle on
muscle on your bones, exactly. Like
versus what else is one?
There's like cardiac and smooth muscle,
gotcha.
the muscle that your organs use and stuff. Like so the skeletal muscle that lives, on our skeleton that we have control over. And so what I learned about that I found really surprising, I actually called one of my, I remember. So I'll teach you what I learned and then I'll tell you how I responded. So I was listening to a podcast and the podcast was talking about how muscle has the ability to lower your blood sugar. And I sort of knew that, but I didn't know that there's two pathways. Like there's a pathway that needs insulin. So insulin is a hormone that our pancreas releases that keeps our blood sugar regulated. And so I learned that muscle, if you activate it, it has this amazing ability of lowering your blood glucose and it doesn't need insulin to unlock that mechanism. Why is that important? Because insulin it's a good and bad actor. I think I talked about this in the talk, right? It's good because it keeps our glucose regulated, but it's bad because it's a building hormone. It wants to store fat. And so if we, move our muscles after meals, then our muscle can act as our first defense at lowering blood glucose. Right. And insulin can just stay at bay. So I think about, okay, I'm going to use muscle first and insulin is my safeguard. Now in the emergency department, how many diabetics did I see? How many people could I have said, hey, listen, do you know the power of muscle? When I was spending time retraining, I remember spending time with an endocrinologist, and I'll never forget one person that I saw who told me about his story. So he told me that he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes about 10 years prior to the time I saw him. And he was on 3 different medications and insulin. And he learned the power of muscle in regulating glucose. And when I saw him 10 years after his diagnosis, he was on the smallest dose of 1 oral agent. He was taken off of 2 medications and insulin because he was regularly working out using muscle as a way of lowering his blood glucose. Like, this is huge. This is stuff that we should really be teaching our medical students.
But to clarify, I don't think it's like you need to be out bodybuilding. It's like you just need to trigger some, like, so it can be a simple, like the different things I've read that I've seen, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it's just like, look, if you're doing, do 15 bodyweight squats and go for a 5-minute walk. Like, it's like very simple stuff. Because I think some people might feel intimidated. Oh, a muscle, I got to go like squat and deadlift or, dumbbell curls, whatever.
Yeah. I'm so happy you brought this up. So I think about this in, I separate exercise from activity. Okay, so exercise is my dedicated time to work on my body and improve my, my strength and improve my, cardiorespiratory fitness. Activity is what I use strategically throughout the day. So a 10-minute walk, 20 to 30 minutes after you eat, 15 air squats, 10 push-ups against the table. Who cares? Like, just get your muscles, just something, get your muscles moving. And that activation, the muscle has to be activated for you to use that insulin independent.
So what does that mean, activate? Like walking, that's activating your leg muscles.
That's the activity. You got it. And this is why when people wear the continuous glucose monitor, when they come through Benchmark, one thing that we really recommend that they do is have a meal and then 20 minutes after, go for a 10-minute walk. The next day, have a similar meal and don't go for a walk. And people, like, when we watch this, it's like real-time data. People are just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, they see their glucose come down in real time. And that is what creates change, right? Because the name of the game is how do you change? And real-time data is a way of creating that.
Yeah, that's really cool. The glucose one was something that I've actually never seen. When I first saw Benchmark and I saw what you guys are doing, I'm like, this is really cool, because I've never seen someone really put it together here, especially locally. Like, I feel like in the US, you can do all sorts of stuff, but here there just isn't as many people doing nearly as much stuff with preventative health, or really kind of trying to package something together. So when I saw what you guys did, I'm like, this is really cool. But the glucose one was unique, like, so because I think it has a big impact, and it's something you've never seen. I've wanted to kind of do that before. We've done all sorts of weird stuff. Like, we've got like pee strips for ketones, and we've done all this type of stuff before. So the glucose one is something I've never done, because that is, isn't it like you have to wear it on your arm? Is it like a permanent, something that's kind of always stuck, because it's always slightly just stuck in there to monitor your blood, right?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked, because sometimes I like jump to the technical stuff without talking about some of the basics. So a continuous glucose monitor, it's created for people who have diabetes, but a lot of times now people are using it who do not have diabetes to understand how they regulate their glucose, like their blood sugar. So it's a device that you wear typically on the back of the arm. And sometimes people think it's like a needle that lives in the back of the arm, and it's in the blood vessel. It's not. It's in the subcutaneous space, so it's just like what you'd pinch. And it's a microfilament, so this like plastic microfilament that gives an estimate of your blood sugar or blood glucose levels. They're the same thing. And you wear it for 10 days. And you can, there's Dexcom, Freestyle Libre, or, typically the types that are available on the market. And you can do anything you want with it, right? You can swim, you can shower, you can sauna, you can work out. You can't get an MRI, but usually that's not a problem for people. What I appreciate about this is that, we want people to see real-time data on how food affects them. But it's also like, how does a poor night's sleep affect your glucose? Like, how does exercise affect your glucose?
Alcohol.
How does alcohol, right? Like, you can see spikes in the middle of the night, like a couple of hours after you've had alcohol, because the cortisol goes up and people are like, oh, wow. And so this is like sort of an example of what we're trying to do at Benchmark is like tie the lifestyle to like results, right? So if we know that most of the chronic diseases we're facing today are caused by lifestyle, right? 29% of Canadians are obese. Like 1 in 5 Canadians have prediabetes. 1 in 10 Canadians have diabetes. 8 million people are living with high blood pressure. So we see that like we have these chronic illnesses that are caused by our lifestyle. Who's doing a deep dive into lifestyle? Like this is the gap that we need to be giving people.
So to give context, can you explain what you're doing? Well, like just to give context, I want to ask you other questions, but just as we're going down this path, just so people know what you're talking about.
For sure, yeah. So Benchmark is a 4-week assessment, and it starts by coming to see me. We spend 2 hours together in person, and we do medical history, family history, goals for your health. And then we do an in-person assessment that involves a DEXA scan for body composition. We do metrics on force plates. And so force plates we use to do a squat assessment, a jump, to test balance. And then we also test somebody's grip strength. And then we finish with a VO2 peak, which is done on the bike or the treadmill. And then after this in-person assessment, I'm sending our members off for 4 weeks of data collection on their own. And so on their own, they're doing blood pressure monitoring. They're wearing the continuous glucose monitor. They're going to a lab for advanced blood work. And then they're wearing a wearable so that I can take a look at their sleep and I can take a look at their exercise. And then it all comes together in a report where we give people strategy and we give people insights. And everybody walks away with clear opportunities and strengths.
So what if you don't have a goal? What if you're like, I feel pretty good, but I just kind of want to make sure, like, because I know, I don't know everyone you work with, but I from conversations, there's some people that are athletic and they're athletes already. So maybe they're working on a certain part of it, or do they just want to make sure they're kind of in, it's kind of like a regular, almost like a checkup. It's almost like a routine checkup, but just a more detailed one than what we're used to.
Yeah. It's their benchmark.
Okay.
Right. And so they're coming in and they're like, sometimes we have people coming in because there's been some sort of trigger, right?
Yeah.
They turn 50 or they turn 40 or somebody, in their life has been diagnosed with a disease. And they're like, I just want to see my baseline. And so they're coming in for, their benchmark. And people are often, they gain a lot of insights through the process because we're giving them so much data. We're teaching them why it matters. And then we're giving them strategies on how to improve it.
Why is VO2 max one of the things that you look at? It's like I think more people are looking at it as a longevity marker now. Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, let's just talk about it because I think as soon as people hear VO2 max, they're like,
They get scared. Yeah, I know.
That's for athletes. And so it's a really important metric. And I'm obviously a fan of it because we offer it at Benchmark. So what is it in the first place? So what it does is it allows us to see how well you utilize oxygen at peak exertion. Okay, so that sounds really fancy, but every system is involved in this, right? So your heart, your lungs, like how well, you can extract oxygen into the blood and how well the blood delivers the oxygen to the tissues. So when we think about this as a predictor of longevity, first of all, every system is involved in testing this.
Okay.
It's an earned metric, right? You can't just come and have not trained and have a good VO2. And the other thing I like about this is that there's two other things I want to talk about. One is that it can really predict function. So you need certain VO2s to do certain activities. Okay. So for example, you need a VO2 of 32 to hike up a flight of stairs.
Okay.
Okay. So
what's the scale? 0 to
yeah, great. Like 0 to, I don't know the highest documented VO2,
but
maybe like 80.
Yeah, okay.
At Benchmark, sort of our highest is actually Nancy, who's got a VO2 max of 70.
Those damn runners, man. The runners have, because I'm like, I do between the CrossFit stuff, and I know anyone that's got a running background, they just have engines. They can just keep going.
Yeah. So Nancy's our highest female, and I think our highest male is 78.
Wow. Those sound like if those are high numbers.
Right. Yeah. And so I think the one thing we talk about is that, this isn't only for athletes, right? It predicts what you want to be doing in your last decade for life, right? So if you're getting down into the teens, that's assisted living. So we need to keep track of our VO2 because it determines your function. And then the last thing I want to say about this is if this is a metric that we try to improve, right, through improving our cardiorespiratory fitness, it also improves all of these metrics downstream, right? It lowers our resting heart rate, it improves our blood pressure. Like it's a very powerful metric to keep track of. And I would love for people to feel less intimidated by it. It's about a 12 to 15 minute test. We don't get people think, oh, am I going to vomit because I'm, it's not like that. We get them to a max heart rate. They feel like it's a hard workout. And we do it in the safest way we can.
Yeah, anything that if you're using max exertion, though, it can get tough. But again, it depends on how much you want to push yourself and stuff too.
Yeah,
right?
and sometimes we actually don't put people. Sometimes it's not safe.
Well, if you haven't been working out, and you don't, that's the last thing you want to do, right? Yeah. So with the VO2 max, one thing I didn't know, I guess someone told me this early, and I don't know why, as I thought it was kind of genetic, and I'm sure genetics play into everything a little bit, but then I learned one of the ways that you can improve it was the Norwegian protocol. Mm-hmm. So that's is it 4 rounds or 5 rounds? So 4 minutes on at about 9. Well, man, I now forget. It's 90% of your heart rate and 4 minutes off at about 60% of your heart rate. So I decided to do this the other day for the first time. I said I was going to do it for months, and I didn't do it. I'm like, okay, today I'm going to do it, and I did it on an Echo bike. And I got to tell you, and I've done sprints. I do Tabata sprints regularly on it. So I've done other things that are like this, that are interval training like it. But I got to tell you that, and holding those paces for that period of time, by the end of it, and I've done other workouts where my lungs are a little bit on fire for the rest of the day. And that's how I felt there. I'm like, that is painful. So if someone it is, how else do you improve VO2 max?
Yeah. Okay. So
because I'm looking for an easier way.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So first of all, let's just talk about the point you said about genetics. I think it's important. Genetics does play a role in this metric.
Doesn't it play a role in everything?
It does. Yeah. Okay. But it's highly trainable, but there is a genetic component. So now let's talk about the trainable part. So this really depends on where you're coming from. Right. And so when people come and they haven't done cardio for, 10, 15 years, maybe ever, maybe they've never dedicated time to cardiorespiratory fitness, then we're starting slow, right? We're starting with developing a cardio base. And so it really depends on where you're coming from. Let's say that you're coming from a position of having a lot of cardiorespiratory training. Then we are going to be recommending intervals. And the Norwegian one is probably the hardest interval we would ever recommend. And so that would really be for people who are falling in sort of like the very high ends of their VO2 max based on their sex. And
they like a little bit of suffering to go with their workouts.
Yeah, because we have to make sure that, we got to break down the barriers to exercise. Okay. And some of the barriers is pain. Right. And so depending on where you're coming from, but one other way is like any sort of form of high intensity interval training or sprint interval training. So the sprint is targeting higher heart rate zones, shorter bursts, longer rest periods. And then like the HIIT workouts can look multiple ways, like 1 minute targeting kind of 80 to 100% of your max heart rate with 1 minute rest. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to go to like the extreme that you went to. Norwegian is pretty tricky.
I pushed it off for a couple months before I finally bit the bullet and said, okay, I'm going to sit down and do this thing.
Yeah.
I won't do it again.
One thing I would say though, is it's like sort of, it's not a long period of time. So like on the days where I don't have a ton of time, I don't really have an excuse not to do it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, yeah, we would love all of our members to work up to that, but sometimes they're just not in a position to. So it really depends on where you're coming from. And this is like also highlights the personal nature of benchmark. So
do you give them then after this, are you suggesting some exercise routines and diet and nutrition stuff as well, or no? You guys?
Yes. So that's a great question because I think we get asked this a lot. So we provide a framework. Okay. So we provide like strategies. We don't provide the day-to-day tactics.
Okay.
And I would argue that a lot of people already have their sort of tactics in line, not always.
It's going to differ because if you're trying to prescribe something, I apologize for interrupting, but if you're trying to prescribe someone to someone that they just really hate. So like, I'm not running some people love running and they get the runner's high. Running's just not my favorite thing to do. I really enjoy lifting weights. Some people just don't, they're like, it's super boring. They just don't want to do it. So you got to find what's going to work for you, or because then your chances of actually implementing it and sticking with it, I would imagine, just jump, right? That's my opinion of it.
Yeah, it's such a good point. When we sit down and do the review together, this is like where I spend a lot of time saying, I am your consultant. You're the driver. Like the doctor's not the gatekeeper here at Benchmark. And I'm not here to like give you specific advice and tell you what to do. So we sit down and we talk about the barriers to lifestyle choices, right? Everybody knows what they should be doing, but what are the barriers, right? Like, why are you not doing this?
Not enough time.
Right? It's a huge one.
Yeah. You must hear that all the time.
All the time. Yeah. But then, we break that down. Really? You don't have enough time. And then like, we use their real life story to figure out how they're going to start exercising.
It's in my opinion, it's always just priorities. Like I learned when I started working out. So I'll share the story because I shared with you earlier. So how I actually started exercising, I was in high school. I was a smoker for 7 years, which a lot of people who know me now, they're like, really? Like they can't believe it. So I was a smoker for 7 years, wasn't in the best of shape, but I was like a little bit athletic. Like I was on the football team and I played sports with friends and stuff. Like I did that type of stuff, but I never really focused on fitness at all. And then because I went to Catholic school, you have in grade 12, you have half credit spare. Sorry, half the period is spare. And then for half the semester, you go to religion class. And I had the first half of semester spare. So I said, well, spare is way more fun than religion class. I'm not going to go. So I just never showed up and no one said anything. I'm like, this is great. They must have thought it was like a clerical error or something that I was supposed to be in the class. So, but then come graduation, lo and behold, I was half a credit short of graduating. I'm like, oh, this isn't very smart of me. So they let me walk across the stage so I could pretend with my friends. That was nice of them. But I had to go to summer school and the easiest course I could find was a grade 10 equivalent course. And it was a weightlifting course. And I was telling you earlier, like it literally changed my life because as soon as I started working out, to your point about muscle and the impact it has, my health got better, energy got better. Like I used to get sick way more often. When I was sick for longer, left with a cough, probably had something to do with smoking. I mean, hard to piece those two things together, but anyways, but it's, and it just changed everything. And then afterwards, when I got busier and I couldn't do it at certain times, so I started working full time and things like that. I changed it to the morning. And it was just first thing in the morning. And ever since then, that was after I was done. I probably started a little bit while I was in college, but ever since I started working full time outside of that, because I was finding I was tired when I was getting home at night. Mm-hmm. I lie. Here's how it started in the morning. I remember now. I was working at the Region of Peel. That was my first job out of school. I had started deciding to invest in real estate. I bought a property to flip and I was going there in the evening. But I still wanted to work out. So to work out, I was getting up at like 5:30 in the morning as an early 20-year-old guy. Like no one wants to get up at that time. And I was going to the gym in the morning. It was the only way I could get it in. And ever since then, I just went in the morning. Because of the difference I saw it made in my health, it became a priority for me. And I just prioritized it, that it was the first thing, that it was the most important thing I could do for myself. And that's why I stuck with it that way. Yeah. So you just find the time, I think.
Yeah. And that spare is probably one of the best things that's ever happened to you.
Yeah. In hindsight. No, you're right. You're right. In hindsight, it probably is. Cause I don't know, and I've told everyone, like I was the guy that dragged Tom to the gym I'm like, you got to do it. You don't understand what it does for you. And my wife will say the same thing because I was like, you just have to and she'll say this immediate same thing. The biggest notice for me was even moderate exercise, the impact on the immune system was very noticeable.
And also just because I think that's such an important point, I just want to talk about why that is. Yeah. So muscle is our amino acid reserve. So what does that mean? It means it holds our amino acids that we need to it's a building blocks for protein, and we need it for every single thing in our body. When we get sick, we need more amino acids. So if people have a lot of muscle, they can withstand hospitalizations, illness a lot better than somebody who doesn't.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought injuries, it helps because I thought it protected the body more or something like that. I don't know. I guess I could be wrong about that, but it's really for illnesses too because of the amino acids.
Yeah. One of the reasons, one of many. Muscle also, improves our cognition. It improves our bone health. It improves our
cognition.
Yeah. So muscles secrete something called myokines. And they can travel to the brain, and they improve our focus, our concentration, improves the volume of our hippocampus, which we use for memory and learning. Muscle is really unbelievable.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, muscle is so important for our longevity and our health.
What if you have muscle, So, there's big, like look at like the strong man kind of figure type person, lots of muscle, but lots of fat to go with it because they need the extra mass to move that much mass as well. So they're not really lean, but so they're getting the same benefits just because the muscle's there, or is there like a muscle to kind of fat ratio that helps with that as well?
Yeah, I actually don't know about muscle to fat ratio, but when you started talking about this, I did think about like muscle mass versus strength.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk about that.
Sure.
So, a lot of times people are really concerned with the amount of muscle they have. But really when we look at the studies and we look at, predictions for longevity and for overall health, strength will win. So, sometimes people come to benchmark and they're like long and wiry, but their strength metrics are nuts. Sometimes people come to benchmark and they have a ton of muscle, but their strength is low. So my point here is like measuring lots of different parts of muscle matters.
Got it.
But I don't know like the ratio of muscle to fat. I just know that, at benchmark, we really target the visceral adipose tissue, which is the fat that lives around the organs that can, really cause a lot of havoc and disease. And that's the type of fat that we try to drive as low as possible.
Yeah. The muscle to body weight ratio is always something that interests me because I see in kids, it's amazing the strength the strength to body weight ratio, the strength that kids have at their age, the things they can do with themselves, like we lose it in adults as we grow up. And the other thing that freaked me out, this was something else. Well, this is when I started going to CrossFit, because when I went to regular gyms, I never really squatted a lot because it hurt my knees because I didn't know how to do it properly. And I was also tight down there. I didn't have the mobility. And when I had my first daughter, I remember she was sitting in the kitchen once and she was sitting playing just in a squat position. And she sat in that squat position for like, I'm like, I'm going to do this with her. And I could sit there for 30 seconds. And she was there for like 20 minutes. Like it was like nothing, right? Totally. And I'm like, oh my God. I looked at my wife. I'm like, oh my God, that is a natural human position that I can't sit in. And I was like so disappointed in myself. And now I can. Now I've had competitions with my daughters of who can sit in the squat longer, and I think we ended up getting. I eventually lost, but I think the last time we did it, I was at like 15 minutes or something, and I was starting to cramp up, like my hips were cramping and stuff, and they're just sitting there like it's nothing. I'm like, okay, I give up. You guys win, right?
Yeah, but your point is like valid, right? We lose strength rapidly when starting in our 40s.
Oh, is that when it starts to drop?
It really starts in our 40s. It's a lot more dominant in our 50s and as we age, but it starts in our 40s. And this is another reason like we really use it or lose it, right?
And so that's why now when I'm at the gym, I'm not really training to be able to hit any more personal goal, like personal bests. I'm just training to maintain what I have, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you still have the possibility to build a little bit, but most of it, especially when we're heading into like our 60s or 70s, is maintenance.
Are you calling me 70?
No, not. But we are fighting this natural decline of aging, right? We got to work, otherwise we're going to lose it.
What about the mobility side of it?
Yeah, mobility is critical, right? Especially for injury prevention and to prevent falls. Right? Falls, it's one of our top causes of death after the age of 65.
How does mobility prevent falls though?
Well, mobility improves our balance. Like balance is part of mobility, right? You're thinking about flexibility. I'm sort of thinking about the whole thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and also like the more agile you are, if you trip on something, the more likely you are to sort of regain yourself from that fall. Strength really plays a role into this too.
That's where grip strength comes in, right? Because you can,
one of the reasons,
like if you fall, you can maybe grab onto something if you're strong enough to
like grab a railing, right? And prevent a really like devastating fall. Grip strength, also just, balance. So we test balance at benchmark too, and we make sure we keep track of that, and power, like foot speed, prevent falls as well.
How do you ever think there's a time when I don't know what you call it, the traditional medical system that we have kind of merges with this? I just imagine there's so much bureaucracy in the way to, for them to try to make these changes, or is it just because to me, they should really work hand in hand. Like it either that, something like benchmark should be involved in a piece of the medical system that we have, or they need to try to implement it to certain people to be like, hey, look, here's where you need to go to try to understand this and move forward. Yeah.
I'm really happy you brought this point up because, moving from the public system to a private system, which I'm practicing now, is not ideal. Like I would love for Benchmark to be covered. And I think that, we are starting to realize that that exercise is meeting medicine, finally, right? The benefits of that. Anyway, back to like the public and private system. I think that these are critical metrics that should be tested every year. Your family doctor should be talking to you about your strength and should be, talking to you about your cardiorespiratory fitness when we know that the data is so clear, right? For mortality and for health span. Are we going to get there? I don't know. I feel like we're moving away from it. In 2012, we defunded the annual physical. We had an unbelievable amount of residents, unmatched.
Is that what we did? We defunded the
in 2012, an annual physical.
So that's why I hadn't had a physical for so long. Like they don't cover it at all.
It's called a periodic exam now.
Okay.
And so it's not that it's not covered. It's now just recommended every 3 years. And sometimes that includes blood work. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes family doctors, will be, taking this into their own hands, and maybe they do provide the annual physical, but it's definitely been defunded. So deprioritized.
Okay. Sorry, and I cut you off. You were talking the family physical, and then you were mentioning a couple other things.
Just that, we're training physicians and medical students are not interested in going into family medicine. And we can see that because we had our highest unmatched residency, family medicine residency spots last year.
Why do you think that is?
I think because I think a lot of it is that family medicine is a really tough gig. And I think medical students are seeing that. They have a lot of responsibility. I don't think that they're paid well enough. And they don't have the resources to provide the care that they want to be providing. But this is a big problem for us, right? Over 4 million people are projected to have no family doctor in Ontario. What are we going to do with that? So I am so hopeful that Benchmark may be covered by the public system.
You're an optimist. But
in the time, I think this brings up a point of that I really care about, and making this program as accessible as possible. So, our price, I'm constantly trying to drive down my cost so that my members have the accessibility and the opportunity to get these metrics that matter to improve their health. And Nancy and I feel the same. And we're constantly trying to find ways of making this more and more accessible.
It's actually really cool. Not just what you're doing, but I think the reasoning behind what you're doing. And I think that kind of comes through, right? Because your Emerge background and what you've seen and the impact you've seen it can have on people. I feel like that comes through because of what you just said about the cost, and you're trying to make it accessible and trying to make it worthwhile for people, because it's not just about look, every business, you got to turn a profit or you can't be in business, eventually it falters. Mm-hmm. So there is that component of it, but it's also, if you're making it accessible to people for the reasons and the benefits that they can get from it, it kind of changes it changes it a little bit, and I think that probably comes through, at least from the people I've spoken to that have gone and saw you, have seen you, they feel that way.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in this so much. I mean, I feel like this is such an obvious path to take. Let's do a deep dive into your lifestyle. Let's give you metrics that matter. Let's identify your strengths and your opportunities so that we can prevent disease. And I see this every day. I talk about this as a window of opportunity, right? So if we have health on the left side and we have disease on the right, and in the middle is this window of opportunity. Mm-hmm. I see people with markers that are pre-diabetic, they're borderline high blood pressure, they have lipids that, just are on that borderline. And we're moving them out of this window of opportunity to health by teaching them about how their lifestyle impacts their metrics.
Who's coming to see you? What type of people? I know there were some athletes and things is it just all walks of life? Is it people that want to lose weight? Is it, who is it?
Yeah, you're right. We're getting a lot of different people. Okay. So sometimes I mentioned before there's a trigger, right? So it's a birthday, it's an illness in the family. Other times it's people aren't feeling great, right? A lot of times when people are transitioning through different phases of life, they're I'm just not feeling great and I'd like some metrics. Sometimes we have people coming through because they want some focus, right? They're doing all of the things as best as they can. Sometimes we have people coming in who are really cardio focused and the message is hey, you're missing out on muscle. And then other times we're having referrals from other physicians, family doctors, gastroenterologists, cardiologists, with people who...
That's cool.
Yeah. And those people are really sticky in the program, right? They show up and they're like, my doctor told me to come here. I have clear lifestyle changes to make. I'm ready to learn and I'm ready to do it. And that is like, it's just so, all of these people are so rewarding for kind of different reasons. But the people who, we're taking out of this window and moving them into health, like there's no feeling like that.
But there's probably a lot of doctors that don't even know about you guys, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah. Like, so yeah, a lot of doctors.
Because no one focuses on this. And it's not, it's not even a problem with the doctors. This isn't a knock against the doctors. I just feel the system is structured in such a way. So for why I called you an optimist when you're like, I'd love for it to be covered. Sure, that makes sense. But the system's structured in such a way, like the mountains that would have to move and the politics involved in that to get these things changed so that we focus on this is like, I don't see it as feasible, unfortunately, and it's now with the science moving so quickly in these different spaces. And I think the science is going to move even more quickly as more AI becomes readily available in all these different fields. It's like, it's undeniable, in my opinion, it's absolutely undeniable that we should be focused on this, that it has an impact and that it really matters to people. And like you said, when you can put actual numbers behind it, it changes things, not just like the way you feel or the way you think you feel. Like you got to understand it. It's just like, it becomes black and white.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I also think people are realizing that, maybe they like invest really well financially, right? Maybe they, have all of these successes in other realms of their life, but if they don't have health, like what's the point, right? And so, yeah, I think that I agree with you. I don't think that there's anywhere for us to move but in this direction. And that's why I'm so excited to be in this space, because I think it's so powerful and meaningful. That's
cool. Let me ask you one other thing, because I know we got to wrap up.
Yeah.
With the speed at which new information is coming available, okay? So actually, it's going to be two things. So I'm just curious, as a doctor in any discipline, I don't understand, what's required, or how do doctors like continue to learn new things? Is it just kind of up to their own interest? Is there a certain requirement that you do so many things every year? Like, how does that work? I don't even know.
Yeah. So the college makes sure that we have continuing medical education credits, and those credits we have to submit yearly. Sometimes it's like on a 5-year cycle, but every year we have to submit certain credits.
Okay, got it. So you're taking ongoing education.
Yeah, we have to take on, and then we also have certain tiers of the credits. So certain tiers, like, our life-saving, education is sort of considered our highest credentials. But really this is up to the doctor. It's up to the physician themselves to figure out where their gaps are, which I think could also be improved. For the most part, physicians are lifelong learners, and they're in this because of that. And so I would say for the most part, physicians are very diligent with their learning. But I think the thing that you brought up is that the rapid pace of information when we're also trying to be clinicians is difficult.
Of course, yeah. And then where I was going to go with that as well, and not any specific medical school, because I ask people this just about universities in general, because I don't understand. Again, it's not a knock against universities. I'm just trying to understand. I'm like, at the pace with new developments and new information becoming readily available in different disciplines, from what I've seen of the education system and post-secondary education, they're not able to keep up. And by the time that the things that they're teaching, there's politics involved in what they're teaching because someone's got tenure or there's this study or whatever it is. And there's too much information coming out too fast and they're not able to keep up. So we're not preparing people to come into the world with knowing what we know now to be able to help people. And this is where I see this growing gap now. And I'm not blaming this, maybe I am blaming the system, but I'm just not blaming anyone. I'm just the way the system was structured and with what's happened with technology now, it no longer works. The system has to change. And I don't see anyone talking about the system changing because the world's changing. They're not going to stop it. Mm-hmm. So who's going to wake the flip up and say, hey, we got to change the system a little bit? And I'm just wondering if I'm missing something there and just kind of what you think with that.
I wish that you were missing something. I mean, this is one of the main reasons I decided to leave the traditional system, so that I had control and the opportunity to sort of, direct things on my own terms. But I agree with you. I do think that this is a growing gap. And I don't think that there's a clear solution right now. So yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. Like, I think it probably, we didn't get into it. I'd imagine the path you took, there was a lot of kind of questions you probably had to ask yourself, if you're going down the right path, should I be doing this? Especially with the background you had, like, I'd imagine that it wasn't an easy choice. I know from the people I spoke to, and I know from my own experiences, not specifically with all these metrics, but just within this kind of field, at a different level, it's been probably the most impactful thing in my life. So I really think what you're doing is cool. I think we actually need more of it. Like, I really do. Sincerely, I mean that. So I want to thank you for it. And I know there's a number of people that kind of reached out to you after that you talked at our event. So that was kind of cool too.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, just a comment on that. I think the one thing that, my mentors have told me is like, if you follow your passion, like, things make sense. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, is I'm just so passionate about the opportunity to help people live their best, to feel their best, to try to sort of answer to their future self. Like, I sort of think about that myself. I'm like, how do I want to feel in 10, 20, 30 years? Well, that's day in and day out work, right? Like, good health is time and energy. And the opportunity that that Nancy and I have through Benchmark to teach people how to live their best and feel their best is something that I'm really excited about. So the path of leaving traditional medicine was very difficult for me, and it continues to be really difficult. But the passion outweighs that.
Yeah, that's really cool. We got to watch out for your husband though, because if he's still patient zero all the time, I don't know, there might be something that goes sideways on him. But to look into you guys more, Benchmark, is it just the website?
So I would love for people to join our newsletter. So every month we put out a newsletter, and Nancy spends a lot of time on this, and I'm actually so proud of the work she does. And we always have a member spotlight. And so if you went to our website and joined our newsletter, I think that would be a great way of joining our community. We're also on Instagram, Benchmark Proactive Health. Our website is www.mybenchmarkhealth.com. And you can always email us as well, which our email is on our website.
Yeah, cool. I get that newsletter. I've been reading it. I forget, I guess, whenever we first cross paths.
Yeah, so, awesome.
Yeah, I like it. There's always something in there.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Hey, I appreciate you coming in, because I know you got another appointment. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Right.